Hi, and welcome to the I T'd Myself podcast. My name is Matthew Miniman, and this is episode 60. What can dinosaurs teach us about business vitality? So, dinosaurs, thunder beasts, giant lizards, oil. These creatures used to rule the world millions of years ago. And there were several different iterations of dinosaurs. In fact, I believe it's like the T-Rex is closer to the invention of the cell phone than to the Triceratops or Stegosaurus or something like that. Anyway, it's there's a whole they ruled the world for millions and millions of years and then died out suddenly. And there's I've heard a lot of theories about why, God struck them down because they were infidels. That's why they're made into oil. There's a lot of other strange theories of why dinosaurs died out. But primarily, the most accepted reason is a single incident caused a mass extinction event across the world, which caused the dinosaurs to die out, with the noted exceptions of crocodiles and sharks and probably emus, freaks that they are. But if you look at what happened, the most accepted cause was an asteroid or a comet striking the Earth. A giant destructive event. A lot of people say it happened over the Yucatan Peninsula or somewhere around there. There's not any one real good definitive answer of when and where this happened, but we do know that all of the dinosaurs died out, and it was caused by one singular event. It was the basically at least the freezing of the Earth so that all of the greenery around the Earth sort of just died. Then the plant eaters, the herbivores died out, Littlefoot died out, and then all of the carnivores died out as well. Not in such a long succession. I'm sure there was some mixture there, and there were no geopolitics involved. So the good news is at least there wasn't any, I guess, communism? I don't know. I was going to make a joke there, but I lost it halfway through. And so what does this do with businesses? What does this do with your business? And why the fuck are you talking about this with an IT podcast? Me, Matthew Miniman, notable entrepreneur and fantastic businessman as I am, I have ruined my own business several times. That's why I don't run my own company anymore, with the noted exception of this podcast, mainly because all I get to do is yell at clouds all day, and that's sufficient for me. No, running businesses and IT go hand in hand because most businesses, at least nowadays, are strictly reliant on IT, and therefore their business kind of is the IT department, because if you lose your ability to do communication or utilize your technology, you are now out of the game, with some notable exceptions such as doctors and, man, I can't think of many more, construction companies. I guess you can still do all of your primary work over paper, but everybody else is kind of stuck doing everything through technology. And if their IT department is shit, or their IT department doesn't know what they're doing, it can cost them a lot of money and put them out of business, basically drive them out of competition because they aren't as efficient. These are all things that allow an IT company to exist within, or an IT department to exist within companies, is this reliance on technology, or companies to pay for an MSP. So all that being said, when you have your business and you are attempting to make it as robust and or as have as much vitality as possible, what you're going to be doing is you should be involving yourself in the creation of a business continuity plan and disaster recovery plan as well. And these are two separate devices within an organization. And I believe I've covered this in the past as well, but we're going to talk about this kind of in a real deep dive. So with a business continuity plan, what you're doing is you are identifying the pieces of your business where you are solely reliant on that aspect or that function or that piece of technology or that solution, and you're trying to identify how long it would take you to replace it, how long it would take you to get back up to a recoverable to get back to operations. And you're also identifying how long you can exist in a degraded or non-working state. How long can your business remain solvent? And you are basically creating plans around identifying and communicating and deploying alternative solutions. In a business continuity plan, it is not necessarily about the individual pieces. It is more a strategic overview of your business where you are planning for failure on the massive pieces of your business that you need to rely on. So for instance, you need to plan on what happens if the internet is out. What happens if your internet is out? If you are a e-commerce business where you're doing all of your transactions over the internet, you're no longer able to sell, or you're no longer able to sell goods. You're just not. That's the thing. If you're having to ship product across the United States, one of the things you might look at is your major carriers. What happens if your major carriers go out of business or stop being able to take packages? What happens in that system? What does that look like? How do you recover from that? And you're not necessarily going to be saying, okay, well, if UPS stops taking packages, we'll just shift over to FedEx and use this contract. You can absolutely include that type of information inside of the business continuity plan, and that would be as part of a business continuity plan. You should also be looking at the core function, the core business pieces of every segment of your business, and listing in those the critical systems that you rely on. And in that, you can say, okay, if this goes down, this is the alternative. You can absolutely do that, but generally, a business continuity plan won't go over that. That's for your disaster recovery scenario, which we'll cover here in a little bit, or disaster recovery plan. Anyway, so you need to be able to, as the business continuity plan, in your business continuity plan, sort of outline what that looks like, as far as these are the things that we know can go wrong with our business, and these are some of the ways that we are planning for this, including things like communication. If you have shareholders or stakeholders that are outside of your normal business, then you'll want to have a reporting mechanism to those people, especially if there's some compliance factors around there, like the SEC or the FCC or the HHS. You're going to want to make sure that you have some sort of reporting mechanism for those folks. Also, in your business continuity plan, you're going to want to list in there how long or in what scenarios are you going to communicate to legal authorities. Are you going to hit up the FBI every time you get ransomware? Are you going to engage the CISA for every little compromise and incident? You're going to need to kind of list what severity and what circumstances you will communicate outside to assistant bodies. And then you'll also want to list your insurance information, like, hey, this is our insurance carrier. This is how much we're insured for. This is how long it takes. These are the services they provide. So that way you are aware of them. And you're going to want to have some sort of identifying information in there, just so that way you have it planned out. If your business were to be impacted by a severe event, like an asteroid coming in, how would you survive? How would your business get from this disaster to the other side of it without having to become insolvent, without having to close its doors? That is what a business continuity plan is. And again, it is strategic in nature. It is not covering the individual aspects, and more, hey, these are the things we know about. These are the things we could plan for. And you will plan for them in the disaster recovery plan. But listing things like your ability to return to operation, what your maximum return to operation time is, what your mean return to operation time will be. You're going to need to know a lot of this information based on the theoretical nature of these events. Again, you can't predict a lot of, disasters coming to you and I mean that in like, you can't predict how or when something is going to happen. You can only predict how it's going to affect your business. And so, if you were going to, in your disaster recovery plan, list, hey, this is what's going to happen, then you should also be able to kind of say, this is how we're going to respond, and this is how we're going to plan for it. And this includes planning for it like, hey, we've set aside this amount of money for this. So for instance, what I mean by all of this, or I'm trying to get at with all of this, is that if you have hardware like servers and shit, or workstations and shit, and like you're planning for something to affect all of your devices, say a flood comes through and destroys all of your hardware because like an idiot, you put your server in your fucking basement and your basement flooded, and that flood took out all of your workstations as well. Well, you would need to know what the average cost of all of that equipment is, kind of aggregate that out and say, this is how much money we can afford to set aside to spend on this before our insurance kicks in. And that is an idea of what you're looking at as far as like a disaster that you could include and sort of plan around. You want that monetary sort of identifier in there, so that way you know what you've planned for and how your organization is going to react when you find that this incident has occurred. So, beyond that, you have a disaster recovery plan. Your disaster recovery or disaster response plan is a tactical response to the business continuity plan. So business continuity plan, like I said, is strategic. It looks over the wide portions of your business. It is saying, these are the things that can go wrong, and these are the ways in which we've prepared for those things to go wrong. A disaster recovery plan is more action-oriented. This is how we're going to respond to events. And oftentimes you can put major events that you can most predictably identify as being the what will more than likely happen. So like, you can't plan for an asteroid to take out your city or your data center or something like that, but you can plan for shit like a flood coming in. That's something like that's very common. If you're in an earthquake prone area, you can also do that. You can plan for an earthquake. to perform or to have damage against your entire infrastructure. And so the disaster recovery plan is different because it is tactical. You are actually planning against events and saying, this is what we will do. And in this, what you should do is first separate your organization into teams, into disaster response teams, where your more senior employees or more senior folk who have more responsibility are given more responsibility in the disaster recovery plan. So in this plan, you want to separate them into separate entities, and you can separate them however you want in whatever way you want. But basically, you're going to have different teams, and these teams are going to be assigned different roles within the organization. And more than one person can be in more than one team, and it's a valid way to organize this. So, for instance, the way you would separate or organize your organization into separate teams is you would have somebody like Team Alpha. Your Alpha team is you're going to identify this as your primary engineers or your vice presidents, and they are responsible for the identification and remediation of an incident. So, for instance, these are the guys that have enough responsibility within the organization to make specific calls and can sort of drive a solution into place without having to check back with leadership. These are the guys who you want to be doing things like, hey, okay, we found the problem and this is our solution. Hey, we found that the building has just been leveled. Our office has just been leveled. We've signed a temporary lease for this workspace over here, and we'll begin. We've hired a moving company to help us find and grab all of the stuff out of the old office, out of the rubble, and anything retrievable will move to the new office. We've also sourced these pieces of technology and this equipment that we desperately need, and we are shipping it to this new leased space. So that's kind of the idea there. Now, you would do this for every major disaster scenario down the board. You would have this plan down the board. Your team should also include a team dedicated to communication, both to media, to your stakeholders, shareholders, and to legal representation and to compliance bodies. You need to make sure that you have a reporting team, somebody who their only job is to report, or who is the only people who are responsible to talking to outside forces. Nobody else is allowed to talk to anybody outside of your organization except for these people. Your disaster recovery plan should also include, on that note, how your internal team is going to communicate, in how they are going to communicate to each other. And this should include things like, hey, normally we utilize person-to-person communication. In the event of a disaster that removes us from the office, we should communicate over text or email or carrier pigeon. You should just have that information sort of listed. You need to make sure that you have your communication paths listed. And if you want them to be redundant, so you want to have more than one communication path listed in there. And the military likes to have these redundant to the type of communication path. So you can't just use the internet for everything. But normal businesses will just be able to say, yeah, fuck that. The internet, if the internet's out, we're out. So we're always going to use the internet. That's what you can say. Or, we can use internet and phone or whatever. I don't give a shit. You need to make sure you have those communication paths identified within your organization and how your teams are going to communicate to each other. Another team that you're going to have is a remediation team that is responsible for attempting to rescue the incident if they can. And so this team should be, and this is most applicable in like an attack scenario where you're being attacked by a hacker, or you have ransomware across your organization. This response team, this remediation team, should be there specifically to remediate the organization and follow through with that. Now, that you don't have to list how they're going to remediate, you can just say in the process of remediation, these are the things they're going to do. But it should include how they're going to begin work, who they will engage if they need help, and when they do that, like what are the time frames in which they're going to actually perform some of those actions and enact that. And it's not necessarily like after 3 hours they're going to do this. No, it's not that specific. It's like first they do this, then they do this, and then it's this step. Like that, you have to go through those steps. Again, you're not necessarily going to get down to like hour to hour, minute to minute, because you can't necessarily plan like that. Although if you can, cool, do it. But you want to make sure that you have step by step, like step 1 and step 2 and step 3. Not this is what you do in hour 1, because you're going to find in a disaster that if you try to hold to a schedule, you're going to fuck yourself real bad. That's just asking for trouble. Anyway, your disaster response plan, your disaster recovery plan also needs to include a team for actual legwork. Like these are the people who are going to be doing the things as they're being driven down by the other teams in the organization. So these are the gophers. These are the grunts. These are the people who are going to be doing things. Oftentimes in an organization where you have customers who rely on you, you're going to have somebody answering the phone. These are the people you want to have that done with. You're going to want to list their responsibilities, what they're responsible for, and who they report to. And you want to make sure that you strictly identify what these people are going to be doing, because this is where the bulk majority of your organization is probably going to end up, because a lot of them aren't going to be able to make the hard calls that are going to be necessary on the other ones. And then last but not least, you absolutely need to have a team. I call this Team Omega in my disaster recovery plans. But Team Omega is your decision makers. These are the CEO, the president, the C-suite in your organization, and their responsibility is to be the major arbiter of any decision that needs to be made. They need to be the ones that pull the trigger and say, yes, we're okay spending this money. Okay, yes, we need to call our insurance now. These are going to be the people who are primary stakeholders who can make a call in the organization that nobody else can make. And these people need to be strictly identified within the organization. You cannot have a business continuity plan without making sure you list these people as a team. Because, and this is where it gets fucked up, if you don't have somebody who's making decisions, you can have one of two scenarios happen. You can have a scenario where somebody is making all of the decisions and they shouldn't have the power to do that, and they're making bad choices. Like, it's not guaranteed that they're going to do that, but holy fuck, they could really fuck a business over if they make the wrong decision, such as in the scenario where they sign a lease. They sign a fucking 4-year lease on a $100,000 property when you really only needed a $1,000 property for 6 months or something like that. You can have somebody make a bad decision like that. You need to have this team there so that they don't do that. But you could also have the other scenario where everybody's afraid to make a decision. They have no idea what decisions need to be made. They have no idea how to make those decisions, and they don't want to spend the money because they don't want to necessarily get into trouble. And that's why you have this Omega team. You have this team there because that's where the buck stops. And that's why I name it Omega, because this is where the buck stops. And these are the people who are responsible for the spending of the money, and they need to make sure that the organization survives and by spending the money in the right places and making decisions. And again, the members of this Omega team are probably members of another team within the disaster recovery plan. These guys are typically also part of the team that is the communications. They're doing all the communications. They're driving that in and out. Now, in your disaster recovery plan, part of what you need to do, and part of the reason why you create your business continuity plan first, is so that way you can sort of arbitrarily or I can't think of the term, but basically in theory, craft a time limit around how long you believe this disaster recovery plan is going to take to enact. Because you don't want to get into a situation where you've burned all of your money trying to get returned to operations, but you're only halfway there. Because not only does that suck because now your business is out, but you've also then done all of this work for effectively nothing. So you want to make sure that you sort of put in your disaster recovery plan how long you expect some of these scenarios to pan out. How long will it take you to source a new building? How long will it take you to get to this? What is the maximum amount of time you're going to allow somebody to search for property? Things like that. You're going to want to have this sort of built into your disaster recovery plan so that you never approach that maximum return to operation time where you are. If you hit this time period, you're fucked because your business is no longer solvent and you have to declare bankruptcy and close doors. So with all of this, if your business has a disaster recovery plan and a business continuity plan, then it's got vitality. It can survive getting punched in the face. It can survive an asteroid. It can survive a Tyrannosaurus coming in and breaking all of the windows. It can survive the vast majority of things, and hopefully then won't become oil. Fucking infidel. Anyways, that's all I got time for today, guys. I hope you have a great day.